Very good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for joining into this panel discussion, and we welcome each and every one of you from Malaysia and from other countries also. Managing crisis in the best way, practitioners' approach. This was chosen specifically considering the current business scenario. Every organization is going through a crisis. Some businesses are struggling to come out of it. Some businesses are not able to come out of it. There are no ways and means to do it. So we have a panel of experts today who will be enlightening us on how to manage the given crisis, what's the best approach, and what should organizations do, especially when it comes to treating this disruption as a new normal. Keeping these words in mind, I would like to introduce the panelists one by one. The first panelist is Dr. Bruce Lim, a well-known figure in the industry. He's the advisor for Clicked and Kerja. He's the founder and MD for JD Mass Commerce. He's also the MD for Technorient SDN Bahad. He's the executive director for Skills Johor. And he's also the Deputy Secretary General for Malaysia Retail Chain Association and champion of Productivity Nexus for Retail and FB. I would like to welcome Dr. Bruce Lim. Thank you, Dr. Bruce. The second panelist is Ms. Jessica Ng, a senior HR and admin manager with Marily Motori Asia SDN Bahad. She has been in this field for the last 15 years. She knows the ins and outs of HR, the trends. So I'm sure she'll be able to enlighten us on the current topic much more. Let us welcome Ms. Jessica Ng.
Hi.
Thank you, Ms. Jessica. The third panelist that we have is Dr. Ling Chen Ho. He's a Senior General Manager and Director for Maiden Malaysia SDN Bahad. Dr. Ling is a very highly experienced person in the industry, and he is also very passionate in academics. So we are very fortunate to have Dr. Ling with us today to enlighten us on this topic. Welcome, Dr. Ling.
Hi, everyone.
So now we are moving towards the topic. There are some questions that we need to raise, and I'm sure our panelists will be able to enlighten us. And if you have any questions, please use the live comments column to put down your questions. And these questions will be taken up towards the end of the panel discussion. Thank you. Dr. Bruce, we are really going through a crisis which none of us thought would happen in our lifetime.
Yeah, certainly extraordinary.
Yeah, many organizations actually had a lot of crisis management plans, but we find many of these crisis management plans have failed. I would like to have your thoughts, especially your opening thoughts regarding this particular issue.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Siriak. Ladies and gentlemen, viewers at home, my fellow panelists, Dr. Ling and Jessica. Okay, to address your question, we must always be prepared for any form of eventuality, right? Because as the saying goes, failing to plan is a plan to fail. But the question is, of course, the extent of what we can plan. So in any form of crisis management, if you want to plan, we usually try and foresee circumstances that may or might happen, right, in the future. That was in the past. what is the risk that is involved, and what is the likelihood of that happening. But the COVID-19 pandemic today is, as you mentioned, certainly extraordinary because it would take uh, a person with a magic crystal ball in order to see, the extent of what's happening today. And even more importantly, it's not just the health pandemic, it's the economic and business aftermath that's going to happen. And right now, it's still anybody's guess on when a recovery could happen, and how would recovery look like, and how would the new normal be once we have uh, recovered. So yes, planning, crisis management are important, but today we are living in extraordinary ordinary times, and then it's also coupled with drop in oil prices and many other things. So that makes planning a little bit difficult, but nevertheless, it shouldn't stop you from planning it from day one. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bruce. It was a really interesting thought. Now, may I invite Miss Jessica Ng, the panelist, too. Jessica, I'm sure you being an HR manager must have done some exercise considering the current situation. Would you like to enlighten the audience how you as an HR manager has prepared your organization, especially your own employees, to manage the current crisis?
I believe this is not only the HR manager's job. This is everyone in the organization's job, in fact. Okay. To be very honest, and very glad that we have a very good management team to support during this pandemic. All right. Of course, my MD have been drivers and then have been forcing us to put everything in place, right? But without the people forcing us, we also know the people are our assets. So we have to take care of them, and we need the organization to be sustained. We need to ensure that prior to the announcement of MCO, we have done a lot of things, preparations. In fact, for sanitization, we have blast a lot of email. We tell the people to wash hands, to take care of their personal hygiene. In fact, in all our office area, in the factories area, we have provide all the PPE to the people. We get things prepared while we are seeing this happen in China. This is what we have been doing.
Thank you, Jessica. Dr. Ling, the construction industry is also very badly hit by the COVID-19. So you, as an expert from this field, what are your thoughts, especially on this crisis management?
Thank you, Dr. Shira, for your question. Well, just like any other sector, we are also very badly hit. And as you know, for any construction sector, the safety of staff and personnel is paramount. And we are always in tune with the stakeholders of the industry, the government, the customers, our employees, and so on. And we are also monitoring this situation very closely, specifically to COVID-19. But in the past, for different crises that we have managed, we have always tried our level best to prepare for all the different scenarios. So what we have done is we have gone through planning, risk assessment process, whereby we map all the risks pertaining to, in this case, the construction industry, and I'm sure it's similar for the other industries as well. You map it up, and then you look at the levels of risk. You could look at two aspects of it: the likelihood versus the consequence, and you could classify them as either low risk, medium risk, or high risk. So in this case, in the midst of this pandemic, it becomes a very high risk scenario. And we are also learning as we go along, because there are so many things we don't know about this pandemic. and we are listening very carefully to what the health experts are telling us, as well as what the government agencies are telling us. So right now we are still in MCO, and we just have to wait and see whether we are given the necessary approvals for us to proceed.
Thank you, Dr. Ling. So, evolve as we go. That's a key message that you're trying to say. Every organization need to evolve their business practices on a day-to-day basis, because we do not have long-term planning anymore. It's all about day planning for today, planning for tomorrow, and so on. So we all have agreed that disruption is the new norm, whether we like it or not, and it's a reality. So as Dr. Bruce, my question is, now considering these disruptions that we are facing today, a lot of organizations see it as a threat. At the same time, many organizations see these disruptions as an opportunity to grow. Especially, we are talking about remote working, working from home, make industry your home. A lot of concepts are being discussed today. So um, how organizations can actually innovate and be creative using this disruption? Can I have your thoughts on those?
Uh, okay. All right. There is always, everyone says there's always a silver lining behind the dark clouds. And first of all, we cannot deny that the dark clouds are there, even before we even look at the positive side. So I like your question because it focuses on the positive. And I think the word innovation is always being used right now. You've got to be innovative, you've got to pivot, you've got to change and transform. But uh, there's a huge world out there on what you can do in order to innovate. And the pandemic really, has forced many organizations right now to relook at what we can actually do with our people, with our suppliers, and of course, with our customers. So the best way of looking at innovation is, again, look at which areas. It's not just innovate for the sake of innovating. Look at which areas are you hit, which are areas of your strength, and how are you going to pivot from there, or even rivet at what you're doing with uh, changes in the way you deliver. So there's no one right answer to it. You again have to assess your strengths vis-a-vis your customers. What are their pain points? You can't move away from that. How strong your people are, and your relationship with your suppliers. If you can move around those three levers, and then you will find your answer in the type of innovation or pivot or rivet strategy that you want to go to.
Okay. Thank you, Dato. It was a beautiful answer. A lot of questions are being coming in at the same time. So, do you mind if I take some questions in between our discussions? Would it be
Sure.
okay?
Thank you. Honor.
Okay. So, there's an interesting question that just popped up. Like, now, this is very much related to the concept that we just talked. Working from home. So maybe Dr. Ling can enlighten us on this. Is virtual office be a norm post MCO? Is it going to be the new norm? How do you change the employer mindset that working from home is as effective as the normal way of working at the office?
So there are two parts to the question. The new norm. The new norm
Yes.
will be working from home. Yes.
How do you
And
change the employer mindset that this is very effective?
mhm. Okay, this adds to the argument about work-life balance that everybody's been talking about before the COVID crisis. So now
Yeah.
we are actually being pushed into looking at this not so much as an option now, but as something that is of a requirement. Because even after this pandemic, then we're going to see there will still be social distancing rules. There'll still be, all the hygiene rules and so forth to make sure that we all protect ourselves wherever we are. So this is definitely gonna be the norm, at least for the foreseeable future, until a solution in the form of a vaccine comes about. So I'm talking specifically about COVID-19, but if you're going to talk about other crises and other crisis management plans that may be in place, then that you may need to tweak this approach a little bit. So the second part of the question is about how this can be effective and how employers can look at it as something viable to do. Well, again, if you look at what is in the best interest of all stakeholders, then this will be something that needs very careful consideration. All employers will need to look at this. And fortunately for us today, we have technologies that enable us to do so, like what we're doing right now. You have Zoom as well and Skype as well, that is able to allow us to maintain face-to-face contact, if you like, through virtual space. So that is still possible. And so we are having to learn as we go because of something unprecedented like this, and we are learning to improvise as we go along. So in the absence of face-to-face and physical interaction, we are still able to do so. And hopefully, as days gone by, we're going to learn to do this a little bit more effectively.
Thank you, Dr. Ling. Any other panelists would like to add some points to this? Because this is a very interesting question.
Yes, I could say now is something like mindset shifting, in fact, right? When we have been working in the office, in the factory, that we don't care what people's talking about, and we want to do, to get our things done, right? When we are apart and we're working from home, we will not see each other. Then we try to, the kind of relationship, we do not know how people's looking at us and what kind of thinking they have, you see. So we are talking about something like transformations, yet we do not know the other party's thought, right? So working from home is one of the new trend, and it's not easy, right? Because a lot of things you still need a lot of device to support. No doubt you have Zoom, that we have been doing Zoom meeting, but again, the reality is different. Well, I don't know, Dr. Bruce, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we have got many online tools right now, and applications that can facilitate meetings and do a lot of things. But of course, we cannot always replace the traditional things of what we do. The best is to have the best of both worlds, hybrid, but that's something we can't do now with social distancing policy being enforced. But one thing I want to highlight about the positiveness, or there's an opportunity behind a crisis, is that these online tools like Zoom and Hangouts and all that, they've been around for years. But you can see its popularity spike during periods of lockdowns or movement control orders such as this. So what it has done, it has sort of forced us to move into previously strange or uncomfortable situation, because we are all humans, we are creatures of habit, we don't like change. But the COVID-19 pandemic and MPO has forced us to take uncomfortable changes and adopt these new forms of normal, of doing. So we conduct meetings, we have webinars like that, whereas previously we need to bring everyone into a hall. And today we can reach out to as many or even more a larger audience through this. Not only is there meetings this morning, Clicked, which is an outfit that I advise, they were actually doing hiring using devices and through webinars and online Zoom. And this was never done before. Most HR managers will say, no, I want to see that person in front of me, probably Jessica, so that I can observe body language, see whether they turn up on time and stuff like that. But in the absence of that, we find that people are changing. Human resource recruiters, they are also changing. providers of suppliers, they are also changing. F&B sphere, we have got people who say that, hey, I want people to come to my restaurant. I want them to see the ambience of my restaurant. Now they have got no choice. Their restaurants are closed. They have got to adopt e-commerce. They have got to look at their suppliers and engage with them using the internet and things like that. So these are opportunities that push many traditional entrepreneurs or business community to sort of adopt. And I think it will be a boon for the people. How well and how far-reaching will it go? Well, that's anybody's guess, as we are still grappling with how to live and how to do business in this new normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bruce. It was really, what all of you have really highlighted the importance of, moving along with a new strategy. Now, if, a question related to that actually is asked by somebody. So they're asking, especially when it comes to the Malaysian context, are Malaysian organizations ready with a crisis management strategy, or is it like a hit and trial and error method? We keep trying every day some new tactics. If it works, works. If it fails, fails. So one of the listener would like to know whether we have a strategy, especially considering your own organization. Do you have a strategy? I remember reading, Oxford University was working on virus X, and that's why they're able to come out with a potential vaccine as early as possible. So do we have a strategy, maybe a crisis X strategy in your own organization? Yeah, I think that should go to Dr. Lim.
Sure. Okay. Now, I'm not going to talk about COVID-19 yet. Of course, we all know what's happening. But let me
Yeah.
talk about crisis management in general, or crisis management in plan in general. So a crisis is often an event or a series of events that cause major disturbances to a business. And it typically occurs suddenly, and it also occurs unexpectedly, out of control oftentimes, and it causes ensuing chaos and confusion. So it comes like a domino. There's a domino effect. And that's why I like the illustration that you put on your flyer. On your flyer, you have put a domino, a series of dominoes, and a few of them fall, and there's a hand that intervenes. So basically, you can see if I just draw examples from other scenarios that we have seen in the past. For example, the earthquake in Japan that has caused the semiconductor and auto industry supply chain to be disrupted. That was also an unexpected event. That also caused crisis. What about Brexit in 2016? If you remember, one day after the referendum, the markets around the world actually went into a tailspin and it crashed. And I remember the British pound dropped by a lot. It's a very significant drop, and it has been lowest for at least 3 decades. So that was also something very unexpected. And how would this affect businesses? So if you're in the auto industry, or if you're in any industry, what happens? So you're going to suffer as a result. Your supply chain will be disrupted. And if you are exposed to foreign exchange rate, because the pound has crashed, it brings all the other foreign exchanges also down. And that will affect your business if you are exposed to foreign exchange. So what a lot of businesses learn from these two examples is, you have your supply chain dispersed in different geographical areas, first of all. And secondly, for the Brexit example, everyone would learn to hedge their foreign exchange commitments thereafter. So it's necessary to have plans to deal with this to ensure business continuity with minimal interruption and negative impact. And that means very active and very quick decision making. So in hindsight, we can learn a lot from all these crises. But if you were to plan for future crises, and if it's something like COVID-19, which is unprecedented for a generation, at least a generation. The last pandemic like this was the Spanish flu in 1918. Most of us were not even born, right? Probably our grandparents, our parents, or our grandparents would have experienced that. So if we have not had this as a scenario that we have confronted before, then definitely we're going to hit the ground running. We're going to learn as we go. So when you talk about crisis management plan, a lot of times what we do is we do a lot of scenario planning. We look at what could be and what we should do in case this happens. For example, I just gave you two examples: earthquake in the supply chain, suppliers of the auto and semiconductor industry, as well as foreign exchange disruption or foreign exchange fluctuation. Then what do we do? And we know how we're supposed to do that moving forward. I'm sure from now, if we go into the future, 2021 and beyond, we would be a lot more prepared for a pandemic such as this one. So we learn as we go along.
Thank you, Dr. Ling. Anyone would like to add to this point, actually?
If I may, Dr.
Yeah,
Syria,
please.
I like the point what Dr. Ling said about learning along the way and scenario planning. And even, taking it as example from the Spanish flu, that was, I think it was in 1918, more than 100 years ago. And even then, when they had our earlier generation experienced Spanish flu, the world wasn't as connected, financially, plugged in. We didn't have the global supply chain. So today you can find that, even with such massive virus attack, its impact on the economy is much worse than it was more than 102 years ago. And no matter how we scenario plan, nothing would have, given us to even imagine what is going to happen today. Because it's not only affecting the business, it's affecting the livelihoods of the employees, your suppliers, and it's everyone in the entire chain of ecosystem. I love scenario planning because it prepares us, although this is something unprepared for. But one thing that arises from all this scenario planning and crisis management is that people have the right mindset. We are always prepared for any form of eventuality. And that, I think, is the key ingredient for the success of a company. Its ability to sort of anticipate the worst that could happen, the worst case scenario, that could happen. And that sort of have put the leadership and the organization in good state to deal with it, as opposed to not being planned, and then you will have to face with all kinds of wrong ways of dealing with the crisis. So sometimes when these things happen, it's very natural for humans to just pin the blame on someone, and try and punish that person, right? Or try and find out what caused it, what's the post-mortem. So I'm always reminded of this little story by Meg Whitman. She was a founder of eBay. And she says, when the dog falls into the well, the most important thing is just be calm and get the dog out of the well. Don't find out why did the dog go in there, who pushed the dog there, how are you going to prevent the dog from falling, future dogs from falling into the well. Most important thing is just get the dog out of the well. So if we are prepared, we would be calm and we would actually sit down and say what is its impact and what should we do in a very calm and calculated manner. And we are agile in dealing with it rather than waste time spending resources on less productive things to do. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bruce. So agility, scenario planning, they're all keywords that actually dominate this particular discussion right now. Slightly moving away from that, I have a question for Jessica. This question is asked by one of the audience. this, we are all facing this crisis. So during this crisis, the most hit will be, the employees themselves. Obviously, employees are equally affected, but employees, some of them, say, I can't adjust to the new reality. I'm not a tech savvy person. I can't work from home. I don't know how to use computers. Even now we hear all these kind of excuses. So as an HR specialist, how would you, answer this question about upskilling and reskilling, because a lot of employees need to change the way they work now. They need to, because traditional work is no more there. So, what is your thoughts on the importance of upskilling and reskilling considering the current crisis?
Thanks for the question. In fact, I totally agree on the upskilling and reskilling to employees. And I believe this is also one of the strategy of the trend, and our government has been pushing to as well, right? So if you can see, the government has given a lot of grants to the organizations for the upskilling and reskilling, right? TVET program, SRGM program, this kind of activities. I think the employees should be, to enroll to know a lot of new skills, right? So as a HR, we have also people development, and we try to educate them. Again, we have to work with our IT department, because they may not good as they can use. Today you teach them, they would know how to do, right? So usually we will do a guidelines for them to follow, and at the moment we have a lot of advanced technology. We have phone, we have WhatsApp, and we can use it as a device to coach them over the phone, over the technology, right? So it's important to upskill. Sometimes we have been learning a lot of things, and we have to understand certain things and to relearn certain things. Right? If you see now, HRDF, they're pushing a lot of upskilling, looking at this COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so the training center, what can they do? So you see, like what Dr. Bruce said, there's a lot of webinar, there's a lot of Zoom meeting. These are all the areas we have to focus. I would like to share with you what I do for my company. Okay, I have a specialist in training. Okay, she's not 100%, all right, focused on training. But at this moment, I would say she consider has less job. No. So I have to find something for her to do. So I get her to Google search from the media, LinkedIn, Facebook, to find all the free webinar or seminar. So at least to share with a team, for the people who are work from home, they are not so boring. And while they are working from home, they are also learning some new skills, right? They are learning some industrial practices. They are learning some knowledge how to make the preventions on this COVID-19 as well. So I think the latest seminar she's looking at is something like mindset sanitizations. This is something very new, but I believe it's very useful for all the people. Right. That's my answer.
Thank you, Jessica. Dr. Ling, would you like to add to upskilling, reskilling?
Well, every year, I think every company will be looking at a training program, training budget allocation set aside for the staff. And the program will differ every year depending on need and depending on the external environment. So definitely now the IT skills become very important. It has become a very essential tool now for businesses. And you will not have you will not be able to use the fact that I don't know how to use this tool or that tool as an excuse, because that is something you need to learn, and everybody would definitely know how to use simple tools, right? Everybody knows how to operate a smartphone. So why not this? So this will be something that you will see feature prominently in businesses moving forward.
Thank you,
Right.
Dr. Ling. Yeah.
If I may add, Mr. Moderator, Dr. Sirek. Okay, I think upskilling, reskilling, a lot of it also has to support the strategy of the company moving forward, post-crisis, or still in the midst of a of a crisis. And right now, we need it even more than before. So, for example, if your business is affected, you are in the retail business and it's classified as non-essential, for example, and your stores are shut, you have got, over so many outlets with over 100 staff. What do you need to do? So you still need to get back and continue to engage with your customers. So this is when you got to reach out to your database of customers, and this is where you need to extend your call and engagement centers, with your customers. So you need to reskill, right, and remobilize your team to the
Yes.
front to engage these customers. This is one. You're running a restaurant. You've got no idea how delivery is done. So your people need to get into delivery. As what Jessica mentioned, get them trained in areas of social media, get them trained in the areas of digital marketing, how to build even very simple web stores, and communicate via WhatsApp. So you need to get such systems up. And previously, in order to be e-commerce ready, companies give themselves between 2 months, 3 months. But right now, what we see is they can get ready in a matter of days. So this is, the type of crisis management, or the kind of a push strategy that we have got no choice, but we have got to sort of adopt today. So this is the area of upskilling and reskilling that is required in the new normal. So aside from looking at sanitization, hygiene, and things like that, you have also got to look at the future directions of that company moving forward. Whether I would foresee a lot into digitalization, a lot into e-commerce, a lot into logistics, of course, health and sanitization and hygiene. Another area would be in areas of collaboration with your previous suppliers and even wallets and things like that. So you've got to support the strategy of the business.
Yeah, thank you. It was a real discussion. I would say the points were really enlightening. I'm sure the listeners are gaining much out of this discussion. Taking our discussion further to the next level, when we talk about crisis management, most of the time the small and medium enterprises are left out, and unfortunately they run short of funds. They do not have the latest technology most of the time, and they are also very badly hit because of COVID-19, the small and medium enterprises. So Dr. Bruce, if I may
Yeah.
ask you, what would be the best way for SMEs to look at this crisis and how to, come out of this?
Uh, Thank you. You're right, because SMEs, by the nature, okay, of their size of employee and by the amount of revenue they take, that's how we define small medium enterprises. They do not have the resources to engage the best practice. So, for example, if you look at large companies, listed companies, they have got risk management, they've got committees, and they are able to get the best consultants to help them. But for SMEs, they are more concerned with the day-to-day running, and therefore scenario planning, thinking over the long term may not be on top of their list as they are firefighting every day. But nevertheless, SMEs possess certain advantages and characteristics that enable them to, I hope, survive through crisis, even the ones as big as the COVID-19. And what are they? Number one, it's a centralized kind of decision making, because we know when it comes to crisis management, the most important thing is communication. There must be a center of it. At government level, you have got the National Security Council. But in an SME, it always inadvertently falls back on the founder or the entrepreneur. And that person must be agile enough to face it. He must be agile enough to see the bigger scenario, and he must be agile enough to have the instinct to want to survive and change, as the situation requires. The other thing that I wanted to say about SME is SMEs right now, we realize that we can't go at it alone. Because previous SME mindset has always been, this is my business, I run it alone, don't disturb me. But that's no longer the situation today. SMEs have found ways to collaborate. They have networked themselves, and together they have become a driving force. An example would be, again, the Malaysian scenario, when we had the MCO, when the second, the pre-Hartin economic stimulus package was announced by our Right Honourable Prime Minister. He did not mention any special allocation for small medium enterprises in 250 billion, the initial one. It was only when SMEs gathered together and had a collective voice that about a week later that they announced an additional 10 billion stimulus package. Now, that even how they implement and all that, that's still a series of engagement, and that's how SMEs have managed to pull together their collective strength to not only come together as one voice, but to help each other as well. Because you must know that 99% of most companies registered with SSM consist of SMEs, which include micros, and they employ up to 70% of the working population in Malaysia. So that's quite sizable in that sense. So individually, they may not have that strength, but collectively, they find strength in each other. But individually, they have the ability and agility to make decisions on the spot, in terms of company strategy for survival. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bruce. Dr. Ling, would you like to add to this point?
I concur with what Dr. Bruce mentioned. I think it's very important to be agile. The advantage of a SME is they are not big, and if you're not big, your overheads are not as big as some of the other bigger companies. There's always advantage and disadvantages in being big or small. If you're big, well, you got a huge budget. But when your revenue dries up, what are you going to do? That is going to bring you crashing down in no time. So being an SME means you're small, your overheads are low, and most of the time, these SMEs, these founders and these leaders, they are jack of all trades. They know everything because they're actually very hands-on, and that's where they learn how to survive. And this crisis, although it's like no other crisis, in COVID-19 is like no other crisis, but it still pushes all these resilient and very persevering captains of industry to learn and to improvise as they go along. So that is very important for survival. And of course, governments around the world are doing their part, just like Malaysia, in Australia, as well as in America. Their stimulus package is in the $1 trillion. It's the biggest has ever been signed in the history of modern America. So governments also has a role to play, and we are in it. We are all in it together, and everybody has a role to play in order for us to come out the other side. So that's the only way to go about it.
Thank you, Dr. Ling. I have an interesting question for Jessica. In fact, this is related to crisis communication transparency. A lot of organizations talk about transparent communication. And we have seen in the initial phase of the COVID-19, even some of the countries were not that transparent when it comes to communicating about, the COVID-19 data and so on. Now, we are not talking about countries. Let us come down to the, organizational level. So, Jessica, how important do you feel is transparency, especially when we are dealing with a crisis? Do you feel that it should be under the carpet work, or we should let employees know what is happening within the organization?
A very good question, Dr. Shai. In fact, we should not keep this under the carpet, to be honest. All right. I would like to share with you what we have been doing in the organizations. Okay, we are really practice the transparency on communications toward this COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, we need to get the organization to sustain, and then we need the people to stay safe. Okay, so we share information, so we try to educate the people. When we understood what happened in Wuhan, what happened in China, I think in the month of January itself, we already start to tell the people. At the same time, we have created a few group chat, WhatsApp with different level of employees. We have foreign workers, we have local blue collars, we have white collars and managerial level. And we also created another group chat for COVID-19 response team. Okay, so of course, my safety officer will be supporting me on this area, right? And we have been collecting certain information from the Telegram, from this web page, all this, and we disseminate the information to the people. Okay, and what is the management going to do? What are we going to do? We plan and we need two-way communications, right? So I believe this is very important. It's not we do not want the virus infections to be spread among all those people, right? So
Thank you. Thank you,
so I
Jessica.
think it's a time that we have to create some new model on the communication as well, right? During those days, we have a small group of people. Okay, this group of people will talk only similar topics. Okay, if you are not my gang, then we don't talk. But with this COVID-19 pandemic, I think we change. Okay, the world made us change, right? So we created a lot of new model, new way of working, right? Work from home is a smart way of working also, right? So with the current advanced technology, everything can be transparent, especially on the communications, right? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jessica. Unfortunately, there is no commercial break for us, so we straight continue with our discussion. Okay, so the next question, Dr. Bruce talked
Yep.
time and again, about business resilience, agility. These are two keywords I did capture from your discussion. And I believe for every organization to be resilient, they need to be very agile, right? So, Dr. Bruce, can you tell us how organizations can be agile so that they can be resilient in future?
Uh, I think I would like to tie to what Dr. Ling and Jessica has mentioned. Dr. Ling mentioned about being agile. That means you are not tied to too many overheads and big cost factors such as huge workforce. And Jessica talked about communication. So it doesn't mean that when you're agile, you can just make a decision and just move whenever you like it. Although all of us would love to be that, beautiful ballerina or gymnast that just glide across. But in order to do that, you need to be really, really prepared. To be agile, you need to have an agile organization, an agile team who is always willing to go with you. And in order to be agile, because I'm telling you, not all SMEs are going to survive. There are predictions from SME leaders that almost 30%, if not half the SMEs will be wiped out due to this pandemic. I try to remain more positive than those numbers actually tell me. But how are we going to remain agile? Because we have got bills to pay as well. There's rental to pay. There's payroll to go out. There are so many other commitments to suppliers. So if you really want to be agile, it's not a question of just making a decision. It involves you engaging with your various stakeholders. That's how you can afford to be agile. You can afford to be agile because number one, you don't have that many other shareholders, so you can make a decision fairly quickly, right? Unlike public listed companies where there are other, regulatory matters to attend to. Second thing about agility is not only in terms of decision making, in terms of agility in execution. And if you want to execute it well, you need to have the people that's behind you. And right now, this COVID thing is not so easy to get the people behind you because there's just not enough cash around, to even pay salaries over the long term. You might have it for a month, two, or even three, but beyond that, it's anybody's guess. Now, you don't want to be faced with a scenario whereby, in the middle of your implementation, you lose half your people or even all your people because they get pay cuts or there's a retrenchment exercise. Now, how are you going to do that in order to be agile? You always need communication and you need that sort of transparency that Jessica mentioned. So it's not just you work from home. I trust you to be at home. Another new thing that comes out of it, I want to look at outcomes from what you do rather than you clocking in the office. End of the day, what happens? So I think reporting, outcome, having to show what you can do is also very important. So that trust comes both ways. And the third thing is you need to communicate. I mentioned already, communicate as in this is the situation of the company. And I think one of the great things that happen out of this is all the fears of the entrepreneurs. Oh gosh, I'm going to cut salary already. I'm going to delay payment already. There's all kinds of funny things happening. But very few of that fears actually pan out. Most of the staff are actually, they understand and they say, let's stick around and let's go through this pain together. So it's not about painlessness, but it's about sharing, defraying, aggregating the pain, not only with the shareholders, but with the employees, as well as the next thing I'm going to mention, with the suppliers as well. You're going to tell them it's not that I don't want to pay you, right? It's not that I've got to defer payment, but is there a way we can restructure this payment? So it's all about communication. It's all about give and take when it comes to this period of agility. Because once you have a breakage in this ecosystem of yours, then your business is not going to move. You're not going to get your supply. You're not going to have the people to work for you and to realize your whatever business strategy that you have marked out in place. So that's a long answer to a very short question. So there are many moving parts that you need to attend to, but when you say agile, you're able to attend to them quickly, communicate effectively and openly and in a transparent manner. Because that's the only way you can manage with the limited amount of cash that's happening around. Oh yeah, that's the banks and the governments as well. You've got to be very clear, right, on that. Yeah, thank you. I know time is limited.
Thank you, Dr. Bruce. Thank you so much. It was really interesting. Yes.
May I add to it, Dr. Syria?
Please.
Yeah.
Well, the future, the outlook is definitely bleak. If you look at COVID-19, that cannot be denied. And a lot of organizations will need to look at it and pull all the stakeholders together, come to the table and see what collective effort can be made. Because no one person or no one group of people can just get through it by themselves. You need everyone's cooperation. And we talked about communication just now. That's important because if you're not transparent, then how are you able to garner collaboration and trust? You will not be able to do that. So it's very important you come to the table and be very open about things and be sincere as well in your approach. So you're going to make sure that nobody is left out. Now, if you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what is at the top and what is at the middle may not be so important now. What is most important now is right at the bottom, survival. That is most important for everybody. So it's so important for leaders to have empathy and sympathy to their members in the organization. Now, if I may, I would probably, if you want to talk about leadership during a crisis, and specifically the recent crisis, maybe I can look at three examples. A certain health minister in the month of March, a certain prime minister during a bushfire crisis, also this year, as well as the most powerful man on earth, arguably, when he's talking about COVID-19. Now, a certain health minister was talking about prevention of COVID-19. The lesson we could learn here is up-to-date information is very important, because as a leader, you're leading people, and it's very important that you act on the most recent and accurate information. The second example is on the bushfire crisis in early 2020, whereby this particular leader of a country was seen holidaying somewhere else. So when questioned, this leader says, "I'm not the one holding the hose. This is the job for the firefighters." So there was a lot of criticism for this leader, because then the question is, where is the empathy? Your people are suffering, but you are elsewhere. So that is the second lesson I think we can learn about appropriate and proper leadership in the midst of crisis. The third one, as you have read, and very recently, this president of the he claims to be the most powerful person on earth, and he was giving all kinds of advice which is contrary to what the health experts are telling them. So the simple message here is, listen to the experts. We may not be experts in certain field. That's okay. Listen to them, because they know, and we have to be guided by them. And last but not least, leaders must have integrity in their speech. You see this certain president, some in many instances making a mockery out of these statements that he made. So that is something that we can learn from these three leaders.
Thank you, Dr. Ling. Thank you very
But
much.
can I have to say, like,
Yes,
I think
please go
most
ahead.
of the SME and entrepreneur, they are in predicament because they will think of, they always think of the revenue, the profit and loss, and versus the crisis at this moment, right? Which are more important now? You have a lot of preventive measures you need to put in place, and they cost you a lot of money, right? The staff or the employees' safety is in your hand. Yet at the other end, they're talking about revenue. So which is more important now?
If I may add, Jessica, it's always a balancing act.
Yeah.
In business, we always learn how to balance things. And for businesses to survive, somehow the revenue must outweigh the cost. If your revenue cannot cover your cost, then somehow there is leakages and there is bleeding. So that has to be temporary. It cannot be ongoing.
Because I
Thank
think
I
it's time
foresee,
for that, if I
sorry.
may,
Yeah.
it's time for that we are not even talking about just business revenue, because even in the SME sphere, we are talking about businesses borrowing money, from special relief funds and all that, which will be paid back, because it's a loan from future income made just to sustain the business during this bad times, which a large proportion will be used to pay salaries for the employees, because there's just not enough money to carry through over, a prolonged MCO period and post COVID period where there's no revenue. So you are essentially taking a 2-year loan, right? You have to commit yourself to paying that back for a few years in order to keep the business afloat. So it's not a question of getting profits for the shareholders. It's just a question of getting money in for the company to survive, sustain, fight for another day, until we reach the inflection. It could be a long U ahead, or it could be a sharp V, which we all. But the question is to survive, and that money in is also to be distributed to suppliers, to be distributed not only to your people but to suppliers, into research, for the future, because we are also talking about innovation. So there's a lot that is being taken. It's not just for the question of profit, and as Dr. Ling has mentioned, it's about balance of what happens. But I agree, one of the most paramount would be the people, because they are the ones that are going to take you through, take everyone through this tough period until we see the light at the end of the tunnel. Right.
Okay, thank you. Before we, I mean, this is going to be the last question, but before we go into that, I would like to remind the viewers to kindly fill up or complete the crisis management quiz for you to get your e-certificate. So please do not forget to complete the crisis management quiz. Please take it. It's an interesting quiz. Okay. The last question, actually, it goes to Jessica. Jessica, employees cannot hide anymore. We are just caught by the, internet, WhatsApp, even in the toilet, we cannot hide now. The employees are behind us. So the invasion of technology has given less private space for employees, especially during the COVID-19 time, right? So as a result, the stress level of employees are increasing. Earlier, they used to work exactly 8 hours. Now the expectation is that the employees work 12 hours. Even that's not sufficient. And even in the middle of the night, sometimes you get a phone call. Jessica, have you done that? Right? So that's what is happening today. So, as an HR expert, how can you, or what would be your suggestions for employees to mitigate or to reduce this stress level?
I think there is two questions over there. Okay, so at the advance of technology, of course, they make us feel easy to get each other. Yet when you are working time, I think you are accountable for whatever job assigned to you, right? But you do have your break times. When you work from home, nobody is watching you. You have to be very disciplined. That is first thing I think every employees have to learn. Even though in our workplace, sometimes we allow the employees, well, we have been always allowed the employees hold their personal handphone, mobile phone, right? If you are not disciplined, you cannot complete your task even at the workplace. And now when you are sitting at home, you are free, nobody is watching you. So you must set your self-discipline on that and get your things done. And when you are sitting at home, I believe you receive more trust from your employers than those days, right? Because the employer don't call you every single second, where are you, what are you doing? They are more busy than you are, right? This is, I think, common. Most of the employers facing this problem because they have to attend to your daily activities. They have to attend to the management level and also firefighting's job. Okay, so they are more stressful than the normal employees. Okay, as for the stress, we believe the stress is coming from you yourself. If you are disciplined, you will not have stress, right? If you are able to complete your job at the stipulated time, do it. If you cannot deliver, just share with your employers. Okay, you need certain time. You need more time to complete the task, right? So sometimes WhatsApp has been taking us up a lot of our time, to be honest. When you're replying WhatsApp in your mobile phone, in your laptop, and you have ignored your urgent tasks that your employer assigned to you because you think impromptu, you reply as fast as possible is, that you settle your things. That is something also in personal things, right? Okay, you may not agree on this, but tell me, whose WhatsApp don't have others' personal phones number, personal friends, right? So we have to be disciplined. This is one of the things I think the employee have to learn to be disciplined, especially during this period. Okay, the employer has been empowering them to do a lot of things and trust them to do things without any policeman next to them. Okay, so I hope I answered your question also. I cannot hear you, Dr. Sharik.
Thank you, Jessica. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
I'm sure Dr. Bruce would like to add to this stress and working from home issue.
Again, it's a question of the individual, whether you are stressed or not. Some prefer to work at home, some don't. But I think the new millennials and all that, they prefer some degree of flexibility, and I think that's what everyone uh, are comfortable with, so long as you're able to be productive. So what do you mean by productive? It means, so it's not just a question of putting in hours. But when we talk about, I think one thing that comes out of this right now is everyone is more transparent. You have to be accountable for your productivity. And productivity means how much have you value add have you given, to the company towards the end of the day, all right, or end of the week, towards the end of your project. And somehow we are beginning to measure that rather than just clocking in and out, 9 to 5 or 6, as we say. So I think these are the positive new normals that have arisen out of this work from home phenomenon. Right. And the other thing would be, even for the bosses, they say there's a lot of traveling time cut, right? There is some downside to it because it's face to face, but nevertheless, I find that I can go from one meeting to the next in just a matter of minutes. Whereas previously, I need to allocate time to be on the car and things like that. So these are all small matters, but they can sort of add up significantly to productivity.
Thank you.
And I think it's an excellent opportunity for work-life balance going into the future.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think I have
yesterday I've got a staff who say, "Can I take leave?" I said, "You're already working from home. Why do you want to take leave from?" Because she says, "Because on the weekend I've been so busy working, I would just like to take a Monday off, where I can just relax at home." And this is the first time I've heard of somebody taking leave to stay at home, right? Well, from working at home. So that's also a new normal that I've faced, just as recent as yesterday.
Thank you. Very interesting. It's a very interesting thought. So thank you. Before we summarize, may I remind a gentle reminder to all the viewers to fill up your quiz to get your e-certificate. Let us summarize our discussion. Maybe I would like to have a few takeaways, from each of you as we summarize this session. What would be the key messages that you want to deliver at the end of this session? So may I start with Dr. Bruce?
Right. Thank you, Dr. Syriac. Yeah, we are all caught. No matter how well we plan, it's no point crying over spilled milk. The pandemic has happened. We don't know how big the effect can be over the next couple of months. But the most important thing is, I think all human beings have this instinct to survive, and that instinct to survive will carry us very, very far. And what fuels this survival is, I think, positivity. You just got to be positive. Some says it's lack of cash. There's a disruption to the supply chain and so on. But these are just distractions. People leaving, threatening. But if you want to survive, you have a good heart. You reach out to your various stakeholders and you talk to them in a very full and frank way. Collectively, I think the human spirit can somehow, tide us through this really, really tough period. And not just me talking, because you can see a different spirit in terms of the business community today at the end of April from March. Because in March, we heard, oh, business is going to fall, we are going to die, we're going to fold, there'll be massive retrenchment. But we got through March pretty much unscathed. There were a few people who fell, but nevertheless, we've gone through that. And no one is talking about dying anymore. Everyone's talking about the new way of doing business, and we're actually trying and testing it out under the new normal and continue doing it then. And God willing, we will all survive to see the day where we come back leaner, meaner, stronger. Just be positive.
Dr. Shirak, if I may I go next because I need to leave in the next 3 minutes?
Yeah, please.
So we have talked a lot about crisis and crisis management planning and so on. And if you see, there's always gaps, when you deal with crisis. We are always learning as we go along because crises are always very complex in nature. I've mentioned that they occur suddenly. They come at unexpected times where we are not prepared for it and or we've never experienced it. So what companies, organizations need to do is they always need to react very fast, make quick decisions to come up with a response plan. And all this will need input, experience, and judgment. A lot of these will need all this that is involving everyone, especially the senior management team. An example will be what we have seen recently about the oil's future. It has gone down to negative $40 or so. It is mind-boggling. How can oil price go down to negative $40 per barrel? It is unprecedented. Nobody has ever seen this before. It's the first time. COVID-19 is the same. Its unprecedented effects has definitely caught everyone off guard. And we are comparing its effect, its economic impact to that of the Great Depression in 1929. There is also, another, almost 90 years ago. So with something unprecedented for a generation such as COVID-19, and we are having to learn as we go along. And until today, there are still many things about COVID-19 that we don't know of. So the right approach would be we have to continue to learn, keep our ears on the ground, as I said, listen to the expert, and be in constant consultation with one another. So that's the only way to go about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ling. Jessica,
Now,
would you like to summarize?
Sorry about that, Dr. Shirak and Dr. Bruce, Jessica. I need to leave because I have another engagement starting in 3 minutes. So please excuse me. And it was a pleasure having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ling.
Thank
It
you.
was indeed a pleasure having you in this talk show. Thank you so much. We hope in future we'll interact more.
Sure. We'll speak again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I could say at the moment, COVID-19 actually is really a hard time for most of the company owners, entrepreneurs, or SMEs, right? So most of the employer, they try very hard to retain most of the people. Okay, they want to sustain their business. They want to retain also the employees. So it's important that the employee have to work together and bear it with the employer. That is very important, right? So, during this period, there's a lot of people telling that unpaid leave, okay, you cannot cut my salary, but again, like what Dr. Bush also had bring this, right? The company need to sustain, okay? They are trying to bring in more money, right? So we need people to understand, right? It's not only the employer have to be empathy, but the employee also, okay? This is not an easy time, okay? Both have to work together. And, it's a very lucky or pleasure that you are still, when you go to office, the office say, okay, you are welcome. Instead of giving you a letter, say, sorry, you are fired, right? Because we have to close down. I believe last 2 days we have been seeing a lot of news about the hotel is closing down in Penang and all this area. Yet we don't want a lot of industry to be closed down. Right, it will be, the jobless people, they will be creating a lot of problem, and it really need a lot of industry player to support, and also the employee need to be educated on this. So after this, I think we try to wait for the MCO to be over, and everyone have to get ready when you go back to work. It has to be restored. We never prepared for this MCO. But you have to restore back. Okay, so there's a lot of things you have to prepare when you go back to office. Right? You have to, back as usual. Can you do whatever thing you have been done before? And what are the backlog you have to clear? And all this, it's not easy. So everyone have to work together. I can see this. When you want to start the operations, right, it's not easy. For us, because we are in a manufacturing industry, and we are lucky that we have approval from MITI that we can work. I would say lucky and unlucky. Maybe some people say, oh, I have a lot of concern, but we are a responsible employer, so we make whatever is necessary, right? So we give people some job and we pay them accordingly. That's what we have been doing. And I think workplace preparation will be the next topic perhaps, when you restore to the industry, what you have to do.
Okay, interesting. So you're giving already a cue where we need to go further, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for listening to us. We have indeed discussed a lot of important points today. Like we talked about business continuity, business agility. We talked about supply chain management, upskilling, reskilling, how to manage SMEs. We also talked about managing stress, especially in these trying times, and how to add value to oneself and to organization. So a lot of important points are covered during this discussion. And I like to thank the panelists, Dr. Bruce, Jessica, and Dr. Ling, who just left us because he had to go for another meeting. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate, and on behalf of Masha University, I thank you once again. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.